Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the Illinois Professional Development Network's webinar on super strategies for recruiting and retaining students pursuing non-traditional occupations. My name is Amy Julian, and I'm with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. And today we're going to talk about both recruiting and retaining strategies for non-traditional occupations. This webinar is one of 4 outlining super strategies with serving special population students that this Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support has put together. If you are interested in receiving the packet of materials that we will be discussing today, that we shared at the forum and that we'll be going over, please send me or Connie Borowski, which is cjboro@ilstu.edu, an email, and we will mail you out a packet. If you've already got a packet, feel free to follow along, and let's just get started. So a little bit about the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. ICSPS creates, supports, and delivers professional development for career, technical, and adult education professionals across Illinois. For the last 40-plus years, ICSPS has provided technical assistance, developed publications, facilitated program improvement strategies for our partners as they relate to college transition, recruitment, retention, and completion. We encourage the achievement of special population learners and also serve in a vast capacities regarding integrated programs, career and tech ed, support, and other items. So we're here as a resource for you as the system. So today we're going to talk about non-traditional occupations. Before we get started, I think it's important to really talk about what are non-traditional occupations. So the Perkins legislation has defined a non-traditional occupation as one in which one gender comprises 25% of or less of total employment. This is determined by the U.S. Department of Labor Women's Bureau and is also part of the legislation that has been around since 1990. So the definition for non-traditional occupation has not changed. And as we all know, it is tied to some Perkins core indicators, which makes our lives very exciting as we're trying to really look at how to achieve recruitment and retention with these populations. So for men, you're looking at administrative support, cosmetology, elementary education, special education teachers, really a lot in that elementary education realm, educational aides included, librarians, dental hygienists, occupational and physical therapists, nurses, phlebotomists, physician's assistants, massage therapists, and pharmacy techs. There is a whole slew of occupations that are non-traditional for men, a lot of which are in the healthcare field, and we will show you later in the webinar where to access those resources and how they're defined, which really ties back to the SIPs 2010 for those of you who work in SIP codes. For women, non-traditional occupations, or some examples of non-traditional occupations, include aviation maintenance or service technician, engineering, all engineering, including civic, aerospace, all of them, law enforcement, including detectives and criminal investigators. So all the CSI stuff you watch on TV, a lot of those are non-traditional occupations for women. Construction trades, welding, computer programmer, electricians, pipe layers, plumbers, pipe fitters, and steam fitters, and then chefs and head cooks. So those are all examples of what are non-traditional occupations for women. So let's get into the really meat of this presentation and talk about what we need to remember when we're recruiting non-traditional students, and that's how I will refer to them. So again, just to clarify, we're looking at gender, not age, as a non-traditional student, into our career and technical education programs. When recruiting non-traditional learners, it is important to use multiple forms of media. A lot of the times the decision is made not only by the student, but is also a family decision to enter into a college program when looking at a majority of our population. So you want to use multiple forms of media. In addition to that, you also want to consider who your audience is. And if you're looking at tapping into or recruiting from the millennial generation, the older or more traditional forms of paper marketing are just not really as adapted for that particular audience. You want to look at marketing your materials on Facebook, on Twitter. Look at what your online presence as a community college is and how those programs can be marketed. And then we'll get into really looking at what those media need to include. For example, what kind of pictures you can use and things of that nature. But really getting to your audience is key. The second bullet there, it is crucial to dispel stereotypes held by instructors, parents, and learners themselves regarding non-traditional occupations. One of the things is that I've traditionally said you can't go into an occupation that you don't know exists, but you also, and the research will tell you this, we'll get to this in a second, that you can't go into an occupation that you don't see yourself in. So by raising awareness of non-traditional careers in early recruitment process allows you to dispel those stereotypes. And let's take just a second here and look at what are some cultural stereotypes. This I have borrowed from the NAEP Explorer NTO Toolkit. If you have not checked that out, we did have a webinar on this just last spring, and it's a great resource to really look at non-traditional exploration. But if we look at these two cultural stereotypes, this is a Lands' End catalog, nothing against Lands' End, but it serves our purpose very well. Looking at, it's from 2012, these two marketing materials. So I would like some individuals to possibly raise their hands and let me know what are some of the stereotypes that you see in this marketing. If anyone would like to raise their hand, I can unmute you and then we can share. I have no volunteers. I can call on people. There we go. Thank you, Janita. I'm going to unmute you. Janita, what is a stereotype?
One of the things that I noticed was tough as long division on Chloe's bag, as though girls have a hard time doing that.
Exactly.
That would be one cultural.
Exactly. That's a definite cultural stereotype. Thank you so much. You're really looking at saying with this marketing piece that girls can't do well in math, right?
Correct.
Correct. Anything else you see there since I have you on the line?
I think I would say the other thing, saying that it's light as a feather on the girl side, but super light and superhero tough on the guy side, where it's, the issue of tough can only be male-oriented, something like that. Tough is another stereotype that women would not be able to possess, and women light as a feather, as though they are not strong.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Janita. You've done a great job. So again, saying that light as a feather, tough as long division really perpetuates that stereotype that possibly exists, and well, we all know does exist, that says that, women are not as good as math. If you look at the boys, you have super light, superhero tough. Trimming the weight of the backpack makes it really amazing and doing without sacrificing durability. If you even look at what the boys have there, they have a nice soccer ball and water bottle holder, whereas the women, those things are not as present. So really just looking at the stereotypes that exist that are perpetuated within our marketing every day. And there is a whole separate series that I have done on bias and stereotype awareness and all of that fun stuff, but that's not why we're here today. I did just want to give you a sample so you can see what are some of those things, what are the cultural stereotypes that do exist within our marketing. So the next slide here, what are cultural stereotypes that are prevalent at your institution? Does anybody want to share any cultural stereotypes that could be prevalent at their institution? Feel free to either raise your hand or post those in the chat box or question pane. I don't have to share your name. So I don't see a lot of volunteers, and that's okay. But what I'd like to do is you to just think of one yourself. What is a cultural stereotype we're not going to share that exists at your institution? And then I want you to think about what is the impact of these stereotypes on our students. Are the students that attend our institutions, are they aware of the cultural stereotypes that are prevalent at our institutions? Just let that sink in for a second. I'm going to guess that some of you are going to say yes, that it does affect the way that we interact, and the cultural stereotypes that we have do affect our students. So how to identify and work with bias. This is a great, I'm just going to show you a snippet of it. It is a TED Talk, What Does My Headscarf Mean to You? And I just want to show you just a small little snippet at the beginning. Okay. So I wanted to show you that. That is a really great, it is 15 minutes in total, but it's a great little snippet on TED Talk referring to how we work within our bias and how we identify our bias. And she does a very nice job of illustrating that. If you're interested, the link is here, and we will be sharing this PowerPoint following the webinar so you can watch the whole thing. And again, if you're interested, ICSPS does do a whole workshop on bias and working with stereotypes and working with faculty to identify bias. But again, what are we here for today? So things we want to keep in mind is when we're recruiting and retaining students into non-traditional occupations, self-image is going to be very important. Difficulties in recruiting students into non-traditional careers are compounded by the fact that most learners do not picture themselves in working in non-traditional fields. And I think a lot of you, those of you who work with the students, are well aware of this. Trying to get a woman to picture herself in nursing is much easier because they have friends, colleagues, family that have done that occupation before, as aside to, say, the construction trades. And so really what we need to do is we need to have materials and career exposure to these activities so that we allow students to be able to see themselves, that they see the different options that they have as they look into this. Our research will tell us, and this is a study by C.J. Allison and I. Corset in 2007, Theory and Practice in Recruiting Women into STEM Careers. And they say that traditional methods foster students' interest in STEM careers, like printing advertisements, site visits, demonstrations, are not sufficient. Women need self-confidence and self-efficacy to proceed in an interest. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but a number of the recruitment strategies focus on engaging young women's interest in STEM careers through interpersonal and hands-on experiences. And that's really why we do spend a lot of time looking at those Perkins dollars being spent in those middle school areas and in high school to really have girls exposed to this. Women, and not just women, but really any gender pursuing a non-traditional career, must feel confident in their abilities before they will develop interest in the career. And just something to consider. So some more strategies that we can look at for recruiting students. Use promotional materials that feature photos and testimonials of current students and graduates. If you have a woman welding instructor, you should feature her in your promotional materials. If you have women who have completed the trades program, you would want to feature them. If you have male students that have gone through nursing, be sure to use their testimony and where they are. You have a vast amount of resources in the students that have been a part of your program, and we encourage you to take advantage of those. Create relationships with employers to provide accurate information and facilitate contacts for potential speakers and resources. So you really want to have your employee network. All career and technical education programs are required to have advisory boards. Use those advisory boards not only for student placement and work-based learning, but also for relationships that will allow students to be placed and come in as keynote speakers. More strategies. Provide service and recruitment campaigns that draw students into the NTO programs but do not take action to single them out. The goal of all NTO programs, or all career and tech ed programs really, is to establish a gender equity as the norm. So not singling out or giving the girl the pink hammer or having her have the pink ratchet set within the automotive program, but allowing her to fit in as part of your cohort. Use gender-inclusive language, not gender-neutral language. So you are actively seeking students from all genders and not necessarily just being gender-neutral with the them and other pronouns that depict gender neutrality. Do not assume, and I think this one is really important. We don't want you to assume that students know what non-traditional careers are. As I said earlier in this webinar, I mentioned that we're talking about non-traditional careers as gender as being non-traditional, not age. And I think when we're working in the community college system and working with businesses, especially when we say we have a non-traditional student, many, many times those who are not involved in Perkins and in the work that we do with special populations, they believe that non-traditional means somebody who is in their 40s or 50s coming back for their education, which is very common in the community college system. The average age of the community college student in the state of Illinois is 35. So you're looking at a lot of individuals there who make that assumption. So be sure that the language that you are using is language that your audience understands. If potential students do not recognize the meaning of the language, it's worthless to use it for recruitment efforts. I hope that makes sense. It is really important, also still on the recruiting strategies, when using pictures of non-traditional students, show them working, not just watching. Show them engaging in the process. Show them engaging in the classroom. Show them leading and not just as a bystander. That is essential to show students that you're trying to market to that they're able to be in that leadership role within the classroom. Include pictures with colleagues of another gender working as peers. Include pictures with individuals in the context to reduce stereotypes by displaying elements of their personality or identity that are not work-related. This process can help counter biases like those that claim that women in non-traditional jobs lose their femininity, or that men working in non-traditional careers are not as masculine. So really include pictures that there was a great campaign a few years back that was, "Are you man enough to be a nurse?" And the pictures that came out of our colleges were phenomenal in showing that every type of man needs to be man enough to be a nurse, or that there are so many different scopes to nursing, which is very important. So some of you might be wondering, so what are those non-traditional SIPs? Where can I find those? This is the link to find the non-traditional SIPs. This is from our website at ICSPS. It is also available on the ICCP website. And this is what you're going to be looking for. When you click on that link back there, it's going to allow you to go to a list. You can look at female post-secondary non-traditional SIPs. You can look at male, and you can look at STEM. And what it will do is it'll tell you the SIP code based on the 2010 SIPs, which is what we're operating under right now currently as a state. And then look at what those occupations are or what those SIP codes do align with. Because really as a college, this is really where you want that information. If you have any trouble finding this, please contact Connie and myself. We'll be able to direct you in the right direction. And it hasn't been, it was printed at one time, so there are print copies out there, but I know that was about 2 years ago. So if you're looking for one, let me know and I'll see if we can dig any up around here. So now that you have the students in your non-traditional occupations, let's look at how to keep them. What do we need to do to retain students into our non-traditional occupations? And I want to speak a little bit to each of these bullets as we go through. So the first one, provide mentors and positive role models. You want to include members of the target population in the faculty when possible. So again, if you're looking at recruiting women into welding, having a woman welding instructor is phenomenal. Establish mentoring programs for students in non-traditional programs that connects them with those working in the non-traditional fields. So allowing the student to have a mentor is a great way to keep that student in the program. Allowing the student to have a mentor of the same gender really does increase that student's likelihood that they will retain within that program. And there was a study done by the League of Innovation about 2 years ago talking about why students stay in community colleges, and very simple things that are important in all forms of higher education, not just community college. I apologize. But the reason students stay, one of the main things is that they felt that someone was invested in them in the program that they were in. And one of the simple ways, which was kind of interesting to me as someone who does adjunct, is to take attendance. Having your instructors take attendance with their class allows the student to be aware that they need to be in class and that they're valued, their time is valued within class. So really looking at not only having those mentors be within the program, but also look at other recruitment retention strategies to allow them to stay. Consider alternative mentoring strategies. Not everybody can meet the face-to-face and be the big brother, big sister hand-holding mentor, but really look at internet-based contact and connections to professional organizations are viable options when face-to-face contact cannot be established. And I do know that even like a very successful mentor program nationally is Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and they also rely on Skype for many of their meetings with their bigs and littles. Include speakers and presenters in classes who can serve as non-traditional role models. So again, going back to your business partnerships, who are you partnering with as your business, and can those individuals come in and serve not only as your guest speakers, but also as possibly an NTO role model? So the next bullet, look at ensuring orientation, both college and program orientation, adequately addresses the needs of non-traditional students. It is important to provide a welcome correspondence at orientation with a list of resources and support services, including services that relate to childcare, transportation, partner organizations, and relevant services for students who are non-traditional. You want to attempt to initiate hands-on experience as early as possible through possibly the work tour or facilitate a tour through your program. Really get out there and show those students what your program looks like. I think there are several colleges who do a very nice job at this. As they come in, as a new student comes into a welcome center, the student says, this is what I'm interested in, this particular program. And there are colleges that take that student and say, okay, well, here's some paperwork, but let's go check out the facility. Let's get them into that space. And that is a really great way to retain them because, again, that feeling of belonging at an institution is so very important. We're moving through the list and we're not quite there yet, but facilitating support groups. This is essential, especially when looking at students in non-traditional occupations. And again, all of these things will help you retain all of your students, but they are designed for this to retaining students that are pursuing non-traditional occupations for their gender. So include clubs that increase students' engagement or interaction with professional organizations. If there are professional organizations that already have support groups, possibly there's a subcommittee of those non-traditional students going into that support group. Look into peer counseling. Many of the colleges have single parent groups that allow those students who have that particular issue to have a facilitated support group with them. the groups that involve like-minded peers in a program is really essential, and allowing them to have that opportunity to really share that they're not in this program alone, that they're not going through this experience alone, that there are others like them. And that idea that I can do this because there are others who not only support me but have come before me through that mentor is so essential. The final bullet there is to train your faculty and staff to consider issues related to non-traditional occupations. It is important when you're doing your faculty orientation or your adjunct faculty orientation to train instructors and administrators to plan ahead for issues related to such things as having a woman in a welding program, having a man in a nursing program, allowing for changing rooms, equipment sizes, so we don't have issues that arise during coursework. Train counselors to understand the relationship between personal and professional and cultural situations facing students in non-traditional occupations. So it is important that the professor not just treat all students the same. And I say that, and I need to dive into that a little bit deeper. It is good that they treat all students equally or equitably, but you can't just assume that all the jokes that were told 20 years ago that might not be an issue would be an issue. Looking at marketing materials, looking at what they have. I remember a good 10 years ago when I started with this center, there was a college that had a shopping trip to market their nursing program. That was really how their students bonded, was on this shopping trip. Well, if you think about that and the gender biases that exist, that is really something that is more geared toward women than men. So that was something that we worked with the college and said possibly there are different areas that we could look at as a student bonding experience. So I want to pause here for a second, and I want to ask if there are any questions, anything anybody wants to share. Deborah, you have your hand up, so I'm going to unmute you. Hello, Deborah. Deborah, did you have a question? Okay, I'm going to put Deborah's hand down. Does anybody else have a question, comment? You can post those questions in the question pane, if anybody has a question, or in the chat box. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share from their college, anything that's going on that you might want to share? Okay, with that, we're going to move along. And again, there is a lot of research-based, evidence-based strategies in supporting students in non-traditional careers, and we have 2 full documents on this. If you have not seen these documents, you're really going to want to get your hands on them, and just my contact information is at the end. Just send me your mailing address, and we will get you out a packet. These were disseminated at the Forum for Excellence, and then we'll be mailing those out to anybody who did not get a copy of those at the forum. So I want to talk about the advantages of non-traditional occupations, because when you're talking about recruiting and you're talking about retaining, many of you might be wondering, so what are the advantages? Why would students go into non-traditional occupations? Because we've already said that it's challenging to get a student to go into an occupation that they don't see themselves in. So what are some of the selling points for going into a non-traditional occupation? And the first one is higher salary and better benefits. Non-traditional careers offer 20 to 30% higher salaries than a traditional career. These are high-wage non-traditional jobs, are attractive to both men and women because they generally offer a higher entry-level wage and a career ladder that pay $20 to $30 more per hour, especially for women, looking at if you compare like an elementary education versus a electrician. And then better opportunities for advancements and established career ladders. Non-traditional careers are often unionized and have established career ladders so that employees can work their way up to even a higher salary and better benefits. That does exist a lot in those unionized careers. And it is important to note that the gender gap does still exist. According to the U.S. Department of Labor in 2010, although women have increased the amount earned per hour in relation to men in the past 10 years, women in 2010 still earn approximately 77 cents on every dollar that a man is earning. So there is an advantage to going into a non-traditional occupation for the women because they do have this established career ladders. And when you look at men going into healthcare, there is that opportunity for moving up and moving through the ranks at a very fast speed. Third bullet there is variety. There are a wide variety of careers available. And if you looked at that zip code list or if you search that, your career should not be limited by your gender. And one of the things, as I said, it's a little more challenging. You can't rely on the bookmarks and newspapers to market to the millennial population. But I will say that the millennial population, as to generalize that population, are very interested in work that brings satisfaction to them. That's one of the characteristics. And that makes them prime for a non-traditional career. So considering non-traditional careers provides a great variety of career opportunities, and I think it's important to not limit any of our students. So there are more. I wasn't quite finished yet. There's opportunities to learn. Work and skills need for non-traditional employment may be unfamiliar, and non-traditional occupations can offer an opportunity to learn new information skills, and sometimes while you're at work. For example, a lot of the trade careers allow you to train while you are working on your apprenticeship. They do require technical skill. Non-traditional careers often require specialized training. Nursing is a great example of that. There's a lot of specialized training that accompanies the healthcare fields, especially nursing. And again, that is a challenge, but also an asset when looking at recruiting students into non-traditional occupations. We have found across the country and within the research that students who pursue non-traditional occupations have an increased job satisfaction. They choose careers for their individual personal characteristics and strengths, and that tends to lead to greater job satisfaction. They are happy and excited to go to work. The growth in the economy is projected to expand employment in many of these non-traditional occupations for both men and women, and there will be a strong demand for workers in the field due to the projected retirements or transfers of current workers to other occupations. There is also tons of research on the STEM occupations and how those occupations are growing very rapidly. A lot of the data is a little dated, so I did not share that today because it's like 2010 through 2020, and we're already pretty much through 2016, so we really need to work with the government to update our data sets there. But there are a lot of advantages to going or looking into and recruiting into non-traditional occupations. We do have a question. Alumni panelists sharing their experience. I think that is a great way to market and to retain students and recruit students into a non-traditional occupation. So thank you for sharing that. So if there are no further questions, I just have a couple more slides. So I'm going to pop back over here and look. I know you guys can see my little arrow moving. If you have any questions or would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and I will unmute you. For more information on this, we have a boatload of information on supporting students for non-traditional occupations. There's also the Special Puff Support Grant that was awarded this year, and it's kind of a morphing of the New Look project that has been around since, I want to say 2002. And so there is a lot of work being done to enhance and support non-traditional occupations. If you're looking for resources, please visit our website at icsps.illinoisstate.edu. The next webinar that we are going to have is November 15th. It's going to be at the same time, and it is supporting strategies for recruiting and retaining students with limited English proficiency. Again, if you request that packet, the packet has all the information for recruiting and retaining students or support strategies for all special populations. And our next webinar is going to feature representatives from the field talking about what the effective practices are within their particular college. going to give you one. I don't see any hands raised. So my name is Amy Julian, and I want to thank you all again for taking time to attend today. If you have any questions or if you're interested in a packet, that is my email and phone number there. Give me a call or send me an email with your mailing address, and I will send that information out. I will also share with you later today the information regarding this PowerPoint and webinar. So with that, thank you all so very much, and have a great day.